Thank you for joining me for the second in our experiential learning series for the summer of 2020 as Center College prepares for the uncertainty of our fall semester. Today we're going to be talking about remote and hybrid experiential learning approaches that I think might be useful as we approach this semester. First, I'd like to make a few general observations or general considerations to bear in mind while you're planning experiential learning opportunities for your students this semester. One of the key things I think will be planning. Planning early and thoroughly and starting at the base level, starting with a learning outcome that is going to be achieved via this experiential learning activity. So directly linking to what your desired outcome for the students is at that initial planning stage, I think is quite key here. And also to think through the logistics, planning those logistics, getting started early so that things aren't surprising us by the time we're trying to roll things out come the fall. Building from that, communication is another fundamental component of any experiential learning opportunity you are going to provide for your students, and starting with your communication to the students, communicating your expectations, what they will be doing, and when they will be doing it, all of those necessary and pertinent details. Also communicating with any partners that you're collaborating with in the community, whether that's a speaker or an organization, making sure that everybody is on the same page and keeping in pretty constant contact. A third important level of communication, of course, is with the college itself, being open and flexible to any changes that might come down from the college based on, say, some structural changes. Say if there's a change to the block schedule or some major component of our semester is changed, we'll need to be available and ready to kind of shift on a dime to meet that structural change. But I also think it's important to think of flexibility in terms of the individuals that you'll be working with, both in the experiences and putting together community-based experiences, but also for our students and ourselves. Not everyone will have the same fall semester, especially if we're in a hybrid sort of scenario, and we need to be flexible and aware that that is going to happen. We'll have to adjust to changing circumstances down to the individual level. Moving on to some specific types of engaged learning. We'll start with community engaged learning, or CEL as I like to call it. And there's a wide range of approaches that fall under the umbrella of CEL, ranging from the single lesson, so things like a guest speaker, which can be brought in digitally in this COVID and socially distanced world. But single lessons could also include a field trip, getting out of the classroom, whether that's a small field trip around campus, around the county, or something more regional. These are community engaged opportunities that the students might appreciate. You could also opt for something that's more unit length, so something like a data set or a case study based on a local or regional organization. You can work with them to analyze data or to analyze their organization, their offerings, kind of working with them on analyzing their particular circumstance. So that could be a unit length community engaged opportunity. There are also projects or opportunities to synthesize course material. And one of the ways that this works well is via a public product. So the students are tasked with synthesizing the things or some of the things that they have learned in your course and then presenting it for a public audience. So it kind of encourages them to make sense of the learning that they've done. It gives them an opportunity to answer the so what question in a way that makes it relevant for their lives and the relevance for the broader application very obvious. You could also opt for something more community-based learning, like a partnership that lasts the entirety of the block, starting with early conversations with the community partner, stretching through the entire coursework, and then concluding with some sort of final project that derives value for that community organization. And then even longer term, there are ongoing relationships that many of our faculty members have with community organizations, and you should be open to continuing those, but also open to the idea that they might look somewhat different in this new reality that we're all facing. So those longer term relationships often take a form that is quite similar to service learning on many campuses. And that's another approach that we can certainly keep in mind for the fall. And here, I think adaptability and flexibility is also key, as I was just discussing. And here, I think it's important to maybe rethink or broaden our approach in terms of what service means and in terms of what service is possible and what needs our community members or our partner organizations might actually have in this moment. So I think it's also a good time to get back to basics and to think fundamentally about how the circumstances have changed for any of our partners and to take that very seriously and to meet them where they are. I think one good kind of project here would be a new needs assessment in which the students are helping an organization think about these changed circumstances and how they are going to adapt and respond and move forward. Uh, as part of those back to basics, of course, any service learning needs to have clearly defined mutual benefits. This goes back to the learning outcomes that you desire for your students, but it also has to have some value generation for that organization that you're working with, especially in this time when we're all very strapped for time and resources. It's important to take your community partner organization's needs very seriously. Something that could be useful along those lines is to work on capacity building and especially digital or online capacity building, particularly around cultivating a greater online presence or footprint for some of these organizations might be a good idea. I'm going to include a link to a guide on remote work ideas and examples. And these are things that you could kind of take to the community partner organization as, oh, might we do a digital campaign, put something together for you that you could then roll out through your own social media channels. And there are a lot of other examples on there, so I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Moving on to undergraduate research, another high impact practice, one that is very discipline specific. What is undergraduate research in history is different than what it is in chemistry, and we need to be kind of aware of the limitations and possibilities that our own discipline offers in this moment. So I'd encourage you to work through your disciplinary channels and see how undergraduate research is transpiring in your neck of the woods in academia. But there are also some resources and approaches that I think are useful for all of us. One would be to design for a digital platform in mind. I think of our RICE event in the spring and the transition we made to create a digital conference type platform. And this happened across the country at institutions of all sizes. And I anticipate that this will become a complementary component of undergraduate research symposia going forward. And I think it'll be a growing component as we move into the future and into this more remote world. And here, as I've been mentioning, communication remains key, more so even than it is now. And I would say structured communication as well. Students need that structure to guide their thinking and to allow them to kind of motivate to keep working on this undergraduate research if it's not as high touch as it might be in a typical semester. There are also resources and guides quite useful, many of them discipline specific, that are available from the Council on Undergraduate Research, and I've placed the link there in the slideshow for you. Another high impact practice that Center does exceptionally well is our internship program. I'm not going to spend much time on this because Mindy Wilson with our Career Center and Professional Development has put together a highly useful guide that I'm going to link just below these resources. But I'll just note that we do have internships happening over the fall and into the summer as well. Some of those are remote internships, and there's a high degree of remote mentorship happening as well, which is to say that these activities continue and they seem poised to continue into the fall. So do check out those resources from Mindy Wilson. Eportfolios, another experiential approach that might find new legs in our current circumstances. It allows students to record their work over the entirety of a course, and this allows for a really nice reflection upon how their work has changed, how they have grown intellectually as a result of the work that they've put into your course. So it allows for really nice reflection by creating an archive of that student work. So looking back to what they were doing at the beginning of the block compared to the end of the block allows for very nice comparisons, and they can see the personal growth, the intellectual growth that has transpired. I would point out that initial setup is vital here. You need to have it ready to roll for the students on day one, especially as we're moving to the block schedule. You don't want to waste a week in trying to get all of the nuts and bolts ironed out. So you really want to have these set up so that you can have the students log in and begin essentially on day one with their expectations for the course. Iteration in these is key as well. You need to use them repeatedly, and that's where the material that is subsequently used in the reflection is kind of built up. Eportfolios are of much less use if they're used very sporadically at the beginning and end of the semester, but using them consistently throughout a block can really derive a lot of value for the students. There are a wide number of platform options, starting with sites.center.edu, so something that we're hosting locally, which gives you a greater degree of control over the privacy aspects, but you could also allow students to set up public WordPress sites or Wix sites or Weebly. All this is to say that there are a number of options, and you can kind of pursue what is most comfortable to you and your students. Another option is to create public-facing products. This is a type of the service learning or community-engaged learning that we were discussing a little while ago, but it's a nice way for students to translate their learning from the classroom into the real world. And again, this really gives them an opportunity, prompts them to answer the large question of significance, the question of so what, in a way that really drives that lesson home and allows it to be very obvious to the student. These public-facing products should be designed for a specific audience, whether that audience is fourth graders or a specific geographical region or a specific demographic group. They're going to be tighter and more analytically rich if they are geared toward a specific audience. So this is an important aspect of a public-facing product, even if part of the assignment is for the student to decide what audience needs this particular message. So building that into the assignment, I think, is a good option as well. Of course, this is a way to kind of overcome the socially distant parameters that we find ourselves in. And of course, you can then choose a couple of different or a range of different distribution options, from the digital, putting things on YouTube, to the physical, printing out actual flyers that take complex concepts and break them down for the general public, and then maybe, say, placing them somewhere out in the community where they get into the physical hands of the people who need this information. As far as the remote and hybrid tools that are available to you to deliver these experiences for your students, really, the short version is there's an incredible variety, and there are more hitting the market every day. Rather than go into a great detail, I'll just encourage you to use what you need, use what you have found to be helpful in the past and what you are comfortable with going forward. The newest, shiniest tool isn't useful if you aren't familiar with it, if you're not comfortable using it in your classroom or in your remote instruction. And I would call your attention to the excellent guides and resources that have been put together by my colleagues in the CTL. Particularly, I want to tip my hat to Christy Birch and Candace Wentz, who have put in a tremendous amount of work in building out these guides and resources for your perusal over the summer as you're building out your courses. Then my final thoughts. Please do see the accompanying resource guides for links and more information. There should be a lot there, but let me know if there are any questions on that front. Also, I'd like you to consider joining the Experiential Learning Virtual Faculty Learning Committee, which will be kicking off in July. This will give us a nice opportunity to workshop our ideas with our peers and get some feedback before we're rolling things out for our students in the fall. And finally, I think I can help. If you have questions, if you have concerns about how an experiential type of sequence can work in this new context, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's brainstorm together and see if we can find a solution that derives value both for your students and for the community at large. Please send me an email, and I'd love to talk to you soon. Thanks.